quick chat message that it's up and running. Thank you. Yes, Chair. Sue's just confirmed that's up and live now, the streaming. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Then we'll get started. I think we might be worth doing some introductions, because we've got some people that we don't see all the time. So I think if we can go around the councillors, Alison, that would be good.
Yeah, absolutely. If I just call out your name, if you'd just like to confirm your attendance and introduce yourself. I've got Councillor Ali first, please.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Councillor Ali, Sajda Ali, and part of this Scrutiny Committee.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Clark.
Hi, Councillor John Clark, lead member for Children and Young People.
Thank you. And Councillor Curtis.
Yeah, Paul Crudas, chair of this committee and councillor for Hankton and Coniscliffe. Many
thanks. Councillor Cully.
Hi, morning all. Pauline Cully, councillor for Mowden.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cindy Hughes.
Hi there.
Thank you very much. Councillor Renton.
Morning, Councillor Renton, Stevenson Ward, and I've got lots of kids jumping over me, so if you hear screams, I'm not kidding.
Thank you very much. Councillor Snedker.
Morning, everyone. Matthew Snedker, councillor for College Ward.
Many thanks. And if I go down the offices, we have Joanne Benson.
Morning, everybody. Jo Benson. I'm service manager for Building Stronger Families and Young People's Engagement and Justice Service.
Thank you. Martin Webster.
Morning all, Martin Webster, Workforce Development Manager in Children's and Adult Services.
Thank you very much. Tony.
Morning everyone, Tony Murphy, Assistant Director for Education and Inclusion.
Oh, and I beg your pardon, Councillor Willis, is because you've dropped to the bottom of my list, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, Councillor David Willis for Red Hall and Linfield.
And Chris, I've missed you as well, haven't I? Chris Bell, thank you.
Morning everyone, Chris Bell, Assistant Director for Children's Services.
And I'm Alison Hill, Democratic Support. I think that's everybody, Councillor Cruddas. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Do we have any declarations of interest? Well, we'll obviously have to use the raise the hand function for this Teams meeting.
Sorry to interrupt, Chair. What I should have said is apologies from Councillor Sowerby and Bell and officers. James Stryhan, Christine Shields, and I've also got a couple of Co-op Ds, Carly, Spence, John Armitage sent their apologies as well. Many thanks. You're on mute, Councillor, sorry.
Yeah, declarations of interest then. As Councillor Cindy Hughes.
Good morning, Chair. It's not actually a declaration of interest. I had a call from Councillor Lucas, and as I joined the meeting late, I'm not sure if she actually has been able to phone in because her internet's down.
Oh, no, I haven't heard from her, no.
Okay, I gave her your number, Alison, but the number for the town hall?
Right, something did bounce through, but I was in the middle of this call and I declined, so maybe that was hers. Is that apologies from Councillor Lucas?
Yep,
yes.
She's hoping to ring in if possible. Sorry, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, that's good. We'll look forward to Councillor Lucas joining when she gets a signal. Can we then approve the minutes of the meeting of the Scrutiny Committee held on the 25th of October? Any comments on those minutes?
No.
No? Okay, we'll take them as read. Alison, thank you. And we move on to Mr. Bell. Chris, performance indicators, if you can pick up and just talk us through the performance indicators, please.
Yep, thanks, Chair. Morning, everyone. So, yeah, this is really just an update in terms of the performance data for Q2. So hopefully everyone's had a chance to look at agenda item 4, which just provides a bit of a summary, but just to note, so this is really confirms the mid-year position of where we are as a children's social care service in terms of our overall performance. So as usual, I'll really just draw out a couple of the elements in terms of where we're performing well and some of the areas identified for some improvement, and clearly more than happy to take any queries or questions from anyone. So in terms of the performing well, paragraph 5 of the report highlights the re-referral rate. So just for context, that's where children and families are essentially re-referred back in for a social care service where in the previous 12 months they've previously been involved and their services have essentially concluded or ended. And we really see that as significant in terms of outcomes, because clearly a big focus for our intervention with children and families is we want to support as we need to, but we do want to support families to be in a position where the changes that we support them to make are meaningful and that they're essentially that they're achievable in the longer term as well. So we really aim to have a low number in terms of where families have to be re-referred, and we clearly want any positive change that we support them to make to be sustainable. So to note, so of the children that have been referred into us during the period, only 10.7% of those children were a re-referral. It's well below our internal target of 18% as part of our KPIs, but I think interestingly that 10.7% compares with 22% of our referrals at this point last year were re-referrals. They'd been involved to services in the past year, and the year previous to that the re-referral rate was at that target of 18%. So 18% went up 22% last year and now down at 10.7%. And as I say, I think it's really something to recognise in terms of it showing that the interventions that we're having right the way through our services, from the Building Stronger Families element and into our social care services, are hopefully supporting our families to make those meaningful and sustainable changes. So again, we've seen that there's been no child during the period that's been subject to the child protection plan for 2 or more years. Again, that's really significant, because we know when we make that critical decision that a child's deemed to be at risk of significant harm and has a child protection plan, there's a real onus on ourselves as a service and on the family to make changes and to ensure that those children aren't suffering harm for any period, and that our interventions are reducing that level of risk and level of harm. And I can say one of the key ways we measure that is we really shouldn't see child protection plans going on beyond a 2-year period, and we haven't had any within that, so that's positive. Paragraph 8, big focus on the number of our children in care, understandably so. That's currently 266 at the end of Q2. By way of comparison, it was 302 at this point the previous year. I make that reference because we often measure children in care numbers at the end of the year, and actually there's a quirk for about the past 3 or 4 years where actually the midpoint number of children looked after at the end of Q2 is often quite a bit higher than it is at the end of the year. So rather than reporting end of year, just to compare, so 266 currently, which is compared to 302 at Q2 last year and 278 at the end of Q2 the previous year. So again, manageable numbers. I would always advise that caution that we don't want to see children in care numbers absolutely drop off. We want a planned and coordinated reduction in numbers and children only being looked after where they need to be. But I think that steady reduction approach gives us some confidence really that the changes that we're making are sustainable. So really good performance in terms of the care leavers. I know the Ofsted report from the focus visit on care leavers has recently been published and outlined some really good outcomes. But so we can say there the number of care leavers that are not in employment, education or training is well below our target, and 100% of our young people in suitable accommodation, which when we talk about the key outcomes we want for our care leavers in terms of suitable accommodation and access to education, training, employment, whatever is right for them at that time, some real positives there. Just drawing out a couple of the things in terms of improvement, or I suppose for focus, and I think a key one at number 17 is around the screening of referrals and the timeliness of those. And I know we discussed this at the last scrutiny, and Councillor Sedka made the point that we have been discussing this for a long time about really whether we measure this in the right way, and that challenge between ensuring that if we have a real genuine concern about the safety of a child, we should undoubtedly be responding in an extremely timely manner, and certainly within 24 hours, and I would suggest, less than 24 hours. But for those where it's a family that have those added levels of complexity, that we really should take our time to make sure we get them the right service. And I think the challenge really for us was to go away and identify a way to measure those differently. We have done that, but what the decision really that we've made subject to approval really from yourselves is that we'll start that new reporting from April. I think to start doing it mid-year, it would make all the comparisons quite tricky, to be honest, in terms of end of year reports and things. So we have done some work away to give you some reassurance, and the plan is that come kind of reported for Q1 of our next year, so 22-23, which is going to be upon us before we know it, that will kind of include some of that more detailed data in terms of how our response to referrals is working, and hopefully that'll allow us to have a bit more meaningful discussion around it. We can see lastly at point 20, dental checks, are still not where we want them to be. At about the 75% mark, but we can see the improvements come. So it was 55% at the start of Q1, and really it's just we're constantly now playing catch up in terms of where we were at the start of the year when there was additional restrictions in place, and that did have an impact on our young people accessing dental treatments. To reassure that will continue to go up over the course of the year, but when we're starting from a low base, it is likely to remain below target, and we're just doing all we can with partners in health just to ensure that we move that forward. And I think, Chair, that's the main part I wanted to draw out, but happy to take any comments or questions from members.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Have we got any hands up anywhere? Yeah.
Councillor Renton has his hand up. Chair, I'm not sure who went up first. Councillor Snecker and Councillor Renton.
Right, Mr. Renton, you go first then, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report, Chris. Just a quick question on staffing numbers, what level we're at the moment, and what success we're having in terms of hiring and tempting people into the roles of social workers, etc.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. We have challenges, I think, in the same way that regionally and nationally we have challenges, particularly in terms of experienced social workers. We are carrying some vacancies within our assessment and safeguarding teams. We've very recently put a recruitment and retention kind of increment addition, which I know as councillors yourselves were involved in and were cited on the decision making around that. The early information is that's had some success. So where previously we haven't had any applicants, I think there was 3 applicants in the most recent round of interviews that we conducted with that recruitment and retention added to it. I think what I would say is the overall thing is there's no silver bullet to the recruitment and retention challenges that we have. So we continue to really look at what best practice is regionally and nationally, and be really open-minded, working closely with HR in terms of how we can kind of boost that. But I think you're right, Councillor, to draw it out. It is a real challenge that we've got, and clearly we've got Martin on the call as well, and we work really closely with workforce development because we know that the challenges in the sector aren't, they're not just financial ones. It's not just about, what the wage is at the end. We're really trying to work hard to make a really good offer for Darlington in terms of the training and support that we provide for both our newly qualified and our experienced social workers, and really try to build that Darlington offer. And it continues, I think, to be a real challenge, but it's not a challenge just for us as Darlington. It's a challenge, like I say, regionally and nationally at the moment.
Do we have, 2 questions. Do we have an idea of what the shortfall is? And was this a long-term problem? I think I remember this being a problem before COVID, but how much has COVID affected this problem?
In terms of current vacancies, we're carrying around about 7 vacancies across the service at present, although it is an ever-changing situation with recruitment going on. I think we've not really seen a great change from COVID in terms of the permanent workforce. The challenges I think we're seeing is we would, as you're all aware, use agency social workers to kind of fill vacancies and gaps that we had. And what we found is that the agency market has become increasingly difficult over the COVID period. I think where historically with agency workers we were kind of battling with each other as a region. So generally agency workers would work within the North East, and we'd probably have the 12 local authorities and perhaps the 5 in the Tees Valley in particular that we had that kind of competition with. But what we've found is that authorities around the country are prepared to be much more flexible, so have social workers that may only need to spend a couple of days a month actually on site in the local authority area and spend vast amounts of time remote, which has meant that North and South Yorkshire have been able to challenge us. Even areas Manchester, Liverpool have been able to recruit workers from the North East to go. So it's made that kind of short-term management through agencies quite a challenge. I think that would be the main COVID impact rather than on our permanent workforce. But turning that around, there's an opportunity as we move forward to try and move coming out of the pandemic to our advantage. As you'll know, we're sort of piloting a more agile and flexible approach to working in the new year. That's different, I think, to what other local authorities and children's services in the areas are doing at present, and we're hopeful that will be an appealing option for people to potentially come and join us in Darlington.
Okay, thank you very much.
Cindy, are you online there?
Yes, I am. I think Matthew was next, though, wasn't he?
I think actually it was you, Councillor Hughes. It was the little number appears now, so I think you did raise your hand first. I apologise for that.
Okay, brilliant. In relation to Councillor Renton's point, I'm curious about caseload, because throughout you said that the cases are more complex than they have been in the past. So I'm just worried about how that's shared out, and also how many agency workers we currently have. So that was just following on from Councillor Renton's question. My real question was about those children that have gone missing. And in relation to those, it looks as though the number is actually quite high at this point in the year. And I see that some of them are from other local authorities. And speaking from experience, I know in the past it was difficult for us to actually hold other directors of children's services to account for those children. So it's really, not to criticize, but really to ask how you're actually getting a hold of that, to be sure that those children placed in care in Darlington from outside are actually receiving the care that they need, if that's in relation to their missing episodes. So thanks, Chris.
No problems. Thanks, Councillor Hughes. In terms of caseloads, we're remaining committed to keeping our caseloads at 18, which is our rate. That occasionally moves over where usually in extreme circumstances where a child or family have an existing relationship with a social worker, so actually to move to fit in with caseloads wouldn't be in the best interest of children and families, so we stick with that. I think the positive story in terms of the management of demand on services is, notwithstanding some of the staffing challenges, the new front door model continues to be very successful in terms of ensuring that we utilise Joe's Building Stronger Families service as opposed to statutory social care services wherever we can, and support really well our partner agencies in terms of them managing teams around the family, again as an alternative to statutory social care. So it's a really fine balance, councillors, and it might be a different position at our next meeting, but as we stand, caseloads are manageable and are safe, I can assure on that. In terms of agency, I think we have 6 agency social workers currently working across the service, and they're experienced social workers. So any agency social workers we take on, we would only take on experienced social workers really to support gaps where we're struggling to recruit into those. As you rightly point out, in terms of the missing from home, it's not a new phenomenon, and I think we have a really good and clear process, and we've really worked well with particularly colleagues in police to have a really joined up approach to missing, but it can be a challenge for our young people who within our area, but essentially open to another local authority, because some of those recommendations we might make in terms of changes to care planning aren't really within our gifts to do. We do consider those young people as a multi-agency, so we have a missing and exploited group, which involves the police and other partner agencies and ourselves, and we review, you know, all young people. The challenge is it's recommendations that are going back to other local authorities who may or may not choose to take those forward. Just to reassure, we have an escalation policy, so in the event that we're not seeing you know, what we would deem to be robust and proactive actions from our colleagues in other local authorities, then we would escalate those challenges through where we're seeing it present as risks to young people through missing and like I say, the routes into exploitation that we know are an increased risk for children that are repeatedly missing.
Thank you, Chris. Matthew?
Thank you very much. I think we were all pointing in the same direction when we put our hands up on the questions there, Chris. So thank you for the report. And I think nationally we're looking at about 15% for agency, and we're about, you're nodding, so we're about that figure. Too high, but and I think what you said about us being agile and the way we're recruiting, but obviously we're all, again, all local authorities are battling the same way, but you know, unfortunately, I think the Department for Education said there's no new money coming, so that what would we actually need to solve isn't coming. I suppose, but the only sort of question I have left is sort of 10 years on from the Monroe review of social care workers. You know, do you think that we as an authority have moved in the direction of that report? Have we taken on board those recommendations and implemented them? And even though it's been a very challenging environment, the over bureaucratization of social workers, have we managed to make progress in that direction, do you think?
I think overall, the very short answer, Councillor Sedger, is yes. And I think that's probably over the more recent years where we have, I think, the Monroe report really, it did look for a move away from bureaucracy and a real steadfast focus on children and families and on practice. I think some of the experiences in Darlington from previous inspections, and I think that the reality of being judged as inadequate and having a real compliance measure from that can sometimes create a bit of a dichotomy, a bit of a dilemma really with some of those findings. But you know, I remain of a really strong view that our strengthening families work that Leeds started off, that we're now embarking on ourselves through relational practice and Joe and the other managers in the service being really challenging when they're, you know, when they are looking at the quality assurance processes of practice, that it's really focused on the quality of the relationship that we have with children and families and how that impacts on positive outcomes. I think that really gets to the heart of what Eileen Monroe was trying to draw out of her review. It would be remiss not to recognise that there's a lot in the media at the minute in terms of two very high profile and very publicised situations. To give reassurance, you know, I believe that the structures and the systems that we have in place are the right ones. You know, I wouldn't go as far as to say that situation is unavoidable, because I think that there's always risks there, but I think that the systems that we have in place to manage things are robust and are the right ones. And going back to your earlier point, it does make it quite a challenge, I think, to stay steadfast to that because of the bureaucracy that comes with things. But I feel we're absolutely moving in the right direction with that.
Thanks very much, Chris.
I think you're still on mute, Chair.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, I don't think there's any more hands up for questions. So if we can move on to the next item, item 5, update of developing Darlington Care Collective. And I think that's Martin. You're with us, Martin, aren't you?
I am indeed, yeah. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you.
So, morning all. You may remember that earlier in the year I presented to yourselves a report based on a concept that we were developing and planning that we called the Developing Darlington Care Collective, and this morning's a bit of a update on some of the actions so far, the progress, and the plans for 2022 as well, really. And I've got a little presentation that I'll just put on as well, if that's okay, just to give us a little bit of a picture of where we are and what's been happening. Okay, so hopefully, if this will work. hopefully you can see that okay.
That's fine, Martin.
Fantastic, thanks. So yeah, so the Developing Darlington Care Collective was a concept that we put together at the start of the pandemic, and it was all about kind of looking at how we could support the sector in terms of, particularly in terms of COVID, making sure that if there were issues in facilities or in programs, projects, partners right across the board, shortages in staffing, how we could put some succession planning in place for the sector, whether it was in the children's sector or the adult sector, to be able to cover, particularly in places like children's residential or in care homes. It was very much based on staffing shortages, but that situation changed where the situation in Darlington actually changed in terms of that issue not being the main driver. The key driver was around training, development, and how we could support staff and how we could engage people in the future to be able to work in these settings and to understand that these settings weren't always in emergency circumstances, that children's homes were really warm, nurturing places, that care homes were warm, nurturing places, and that actually coming to work in care is a really fantastic thing, and coming to work with children and young people is a really fantastic thing to do. So actually leading on from some of the things that Chris talked about and some of the questions from yourselves around recruitment, I think this presentation is probably timed quite nicely in the agenda to hopefully pick up some of those kind of key areas as well. So where we are now and where we are at the moment is, as has been mentioned, across the country, there's real recruitment and retention issues nationally, really. And I speak to lots of colleagues on workforce development calls and different teams meetings around recruitment and retention, and the situation is exactly the same and worse in other areas as well. So what we've done so far this year and where we are at the moment is earlier in the year there was a round of funding, government workforce funding that was received by Darlington Borough Council, and from a workforce development side, a training and development side, we received £53,000, and we worked with our colleagues in learning and skills based over at the Coleridge Centre to develop some programs around working with children, young people and adults. So we developed a level 1 program, a level 2 program and a level 3 program, and we've had some fantastic kind of progress so far. In the level 1 program, there was 23 people that have taken that first step on the ladder. On the level 2 program, fantastically, there was 165 people that have completed or are completing level 2, which is just amazing, really. And level 3 so far, because it's a year long, the diploma, there's one person completed and they fast tracked basically, but there's still people completing the level 3, which is just a great place to be. They're really pushing forwards, and we're taking note of who they are, and I'll talk a little bit in the next minute or two around what we're going to be hopefully doing with those people in the future. There's also been a second round of funding, and what we're looking at from that second round is hopefully to hold on to around £30,000. Now this is in the adult sector, and it's around level 4 and level 5 social care managers. But I mentioned that in this meeting and in this report because the idea is how we progress people through. So if people are training to become managers in adult social care settings, the idea is that we employ younger people and move them up the ladder and get them involved in the adult social care side. So it's almost like a throughput sort of system where they're moving up the ladder. So it's looking at youth unemployment and all of those different areas as well. So the key thing about where we are now is that all eyes are on destinations, progression, employment, and that opportunity to grow our own and attract the best in Darlington. So all of our learners will be offered and will be part of the Developing Darlington Care Collective. So some of the key achievements so far this year through 2021, and again, the whole idea is around how we engage people and how we get them on that first step of the ladder, and I'll keep on mentioning that. So our team in workforce development, we have a shared training and development offer across the sector. So we work with partners, and partners work for us and we work for them. So any training programs that we put on, we open up places for our partner organisations as well. And hopefully it's a reciprocal relationship as well. So partners come and deliver training on our behalf, and we have our staff on there and our volunteers on there as well. We're also really kind of involved in the Adult Skills Centre and Youth Employability Centre as well in the town centre, and just opposite where I am in North Lodge at the moment. And that's all linking into the training and development side and how we can hopefully upskill the workforce to come in and actually take those places that Chris was mentioning a little bit earlier, and in adult social care as well. Really involved in the Children and Young People's Plan. with that focus on young people and employability. Developing some fantastic resources. So as the pandemic kind of hit, as I'm sure colleagues will know, really the situation was always face-to-face training. We would always do face-to-face meetings. Everything kind of changed, obviously, over the last 1.5 to 2 years. And now we've got some amazing resources. So we've developed a YouTube channel. We've developed podcasts and videocasts, podcasts. We're looking at a concept called micro-learning as well, which is, I'm sure yourselves have tons and tons of 50 to 100-page documents that you have to go through. The idea with micro-learning is that you take a clip of 30 seconds to a minute, which could be something absolutely profound that somebody said, and we send that out to people. So that's a concept that we're developing for the new year as well, where you get those really key messages in a micro-teach kind of way. I've mentioned the workforce capacity funding already, and we're looking at real progression pathways. So we've got lots of social work students that are working in our teams at the moment, right across children's and adult services. We've had projects with health students where they've been coming in to work in DBC as well. We've got a brilliant apprenticeship set up as well for apprentice social workers, and we have 6 apprentices working at the moment with the capacity to build in another 4 in September next year. We have a program called Step Up to Social Work, and we've got a new 6 starting on the Step Up to Social Work program as well. We have lots of links with universities and colleges. So the Care Collective is really about fostering and holding on to and supporting these people to get into our services and into our teams. So where we're going is the key question, really. And the key focus is around recruitment, retention, training, progression, and really importantly, destinations. And one of the ways that we're going to do this is through a concept that we're developing called Darlington Extra. And Darlington Extra is going to be a mini website, a microsite. So a couple of years back, there was a microsite that we used for social care recruitment, and it just kind of stopped. Nothing really happened for a number of years with it, and it just kind of hid in the background. So I spoke with James Stroyan about 6 months ago and asked if we could take it on and redevelop it. And we're in the midst of redeveloping it now. It's not exactly 100% ready, but essentially it's going to be focusing on working in Darlington, making Darlington a great place to live, the Care Collective, fostering and carers, the workforce toolkit that we have, and the Darlington Academy. And what I'd like to do now is I'm just going to stop sharing and I'm going to reshare where we are at the moment with that microsite. And like I say, it's not 100% ready yet, but it's pretty much there and ready to go. Has that reshared that new page with Darlington Extra on it?
Yeah, it has.
Yeah, we got that.
Fantastic, great. So Darlington Extra is going to be very much about promoting Darlington, really. Promoting Darlington is a great place to work. So there's going to be a section around working in Darlington that talks around jobs and careers, council jobs, not just in the council though. Talks about jobs in lots of other places across the board, because partners are linking in with this. It's not just about kind of DBC jobs, it's about education jobs. It can be around jobs in other sectors. So we're working in the town centre programmes with colleagues from EE, linking with Cummins, linking with places and making Darlington that place to work for yourselves. It's going to be about that great place to live. So talking about local attractions and all of the things that are good about Darlington. Lots of information will be on those pages as well. Really importantly, it's going to focus on the Care Collective. And one of the key things from the Care Collective side is we've developed these interest forms. So we're going to be pushing these massively across the board with schools, so year 10 and year 11 students, with colleges, local colleges in Darlington, and with universities that link to Darlington. So for example, if you wanted to become a member of the Developing Darlington Care Collective, you click on this, and hopefully it'll take us through. So yeah, so you just basically give your consent for storing the data, and then it asks a series of probably 4 or 5 really simple questions. You submit your own data, you tell us who you are, whether you have a DBS at the moment, whether you're interested in working with children or adults, and then you submit the form. It comes through to us, and then we hold you and we say, okay, we'd like you to come and do some training. These are the training programs that are available to you at the moment. This is how you can progress. And this is where your destination might be, because that's been the important part from my own perspective. I've personally trained tons and tons of people around working with children and young people. Lots of people that were not members of Darlington Borough Council, lots of people that were members of the public. And the issue has always been destinations for them. So they'll do the training, and then sometimes they'll apply for jobs, or they'll kind of get knocked back on that first step. and then actually they don't apply again, and you lose that person that you know would be fantastic in the sector. So now what the idea is how we hold on to these people and how we make sure that they're part of something. So if they do get knocked back on that first kind of interview, then actually we keep hold of them and we recycle them into it, so we never lose an applicant. And that's a concept that's been used nationally as well, the never lose an applicant concept. So we're going to keep hold of those people and develop them and help them get to become part of the sector. And whether that's with DBC or whether that's with wherever it may be, voluntary sector, health, etc., the idea is that we keep them within Darlington. And also, if you're a partner agency, you click on this form and you fill in your details as a partner agency. That fires through to us, and we link in with you, and we become a partner of the Care Collective as well. There's also a section, I won't go through these in masses of detail. There's also a section on foster caring. So what is a foster carer? All of the different details about being a foster carer, and that if you are an existing foster carer, it'll take you through to a link into your foster carer portal. If you're not a foster carer but you're interested in becoming a foster carer, it'll tell you all about being a foster carer, and it links to some phenomenal YouTube and Facebook videos and things from our own foster carers in Darlington, which are fantastic. Also, if you're a carer, so it's about carers, young carers, parent carers. So the sections on each of these areas. So it talks about the Parent Carer Forum, links into who the Parent Carer Forum are, everything about being a carer. If you're not sure if you're a carer or not, you can take our carer quiz to say, are you a carer, young carer, parent carer, like I said. And then fantastically, we've got this thing called our Workforce Toolkit, which is again still in development, but it will have all of our links to the Safeguarding Board, the Living Well site, the Learning and Skills team. We've got a page that we're developing around podcasts. So we're going to have a podcast channel, which is linked to Spotify and Amazon Music and things like that. Podcasts are the same, which is a video podcast. Lots of resources. You can tell it's not quite ready with the question marks there. But our Twitter links, our YouTube links, and we're also going to have very kind of young people focused a TikTok and an Instagram account as well. And all of that links into the Darlington Academy, which is all about your first steps on the ladder. So I keep on talking about first steps. So getting people involved and actually following their journey right the way up to step 5, which is kind of, I guess, Chris's job and James's job. So getting people engaged here, looking at their journey, and actually then becoming assistant director and director at the end of it, really. So the idea behind the Care Collective is really simple. It's about getting people on that first step on the ladder and actually supporting people through the system and getting them involved in working for Darlington Borough Council, really, but working across Darlington, either with children, young people or adults. So I'll just stop sharing that and I'll just go very quickly back to the presentation again. So yeah, so the idea is around recruitment retention. It's really exciting. Hopefully this Darlington Extra platform will become that conduit. We're going to be making sure that we flood the market with it. It's going to go out in our training directory, which goes to tons of partners across the board. It's going to go out in the safeguarding board communications as well, and through lots of different partners communications. The college are really keen. The local universities are really keen. The care sector is really keen to be involved as well. So it's hopefully something that will go from strength to strength. It's not an easy task to kind of, as Chris has alluded to as well, it's not an easy task to recruit in the workforce because there's some real issues, particularly amongst young people and motivation that we're finding at the moment, some difficulties there, but it's about how we can engage people and really kind of let them know what it's really like to work with children, young people and adults in the town, and get them that first step on the ladder and get them progressed right across the board. And happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. That was great. Be interesting to see how many hits the extra site gets when you get it up and in full commission. Yeah. So I think we've got a question from Councillor Cully.
Thank you, Chair. That is a fantastic piece of work. Can I just say that? Really.
Oh, thanks.
I mean, enthusiastic, fantastic, really wonderful. My question is, I think you said stage 1 there was 23 maybe, and stage 2 there was 100 and something.
Yeah.
Can people just stop at stage 1 and we find them immediately? We can find them jobs around town, or are you still trying to encourage them to do more? Because I know some people have a natural level that they need to stop at because they get too bothered and you know, it's too difficult to go any further up the scale. I just wondered how of those people, have we set anybody off in jobs? And how's it looking? How's it looking? Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for the question. So the step 1, step 2, and step 3, they're different accreditations. So level 1 is a really simple kind of 10-week program around working with children and young people. And I would say if you do a level 1, you're more likely to kind of engage in volunteering activities rather than get any paid employment. Level 2, you can potentially get programs and you can potentially get some employability if you do a level 2 program, but level 3 is really, because it's the level 3 is a full diploma. It's a 150 credit diploma, which will lead you into which can lead you to university straight away after that as well. So level 3 is the area that we're looking at in particularly early help related teams, to get at the minimum of a level 3 qualification so you can work full time in an early help team. Level 2 you can potentially work in, I think probably some of the places, voluntary sector organisations will take level 2 workers, but level 3 is where we're really looking at. So to get them on board and to get them moving and motoring along is where we're aiming to do. And I guess from an apprentice, where we are at the moment, the apprenticeship, we're looking to take on external apprentices next year that have done level 3s. So the idea is that they will transfer straight from the kind of the level 3 program into apprenticeships, and we can get them moving into the system as well. It can be a bit of a long process in some ways to get actually in there. It could be a year before people are qualified to work, but we're finding people have actually got some really well related qualifications already. So I always see the kind of qualification framework as a more of a climbing frame than a ladder. So you don't have to start at the bottom again. You can move across and use the qualifications that you've got already and just move across rather than starting again from the beginning.
Fabulous, thank you. Well done.
Cheers.
You're on mute, Chair. I think Councillor Hughes' hand's up now.
Councillor Hughes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Martin, this is very exciting news. I took the opportunity while you were presenting to look at the demographics in Darlington from the report that the council produced, I think 2019, and it looks like we've got quite a drop in the number of people in 2024 in that younger age group. So really the probably it's 24 to 40 looking ahead. So I liked what you just said about level 3, because we've got to find ways. We need the progression is really important, and we've been saying that a long time. So it's great that visually it's there now. People can see, okay, if I head in this direction, these are the sorts of things I can expect if I work hard. So I'm pleased that it's like a mix. And obviously I've been going around talking to a lot of businesses. Everybody's trying to recruit. So my big question is, what about the wages? How are we going to be able to compare with other sectors, but also other areas in the region and beyond for caring work? Because I think that this sort of collective approach can only take us so far. So if you could help me out with that one, that would be great. And
yeah, I mean,
thanks.
It's the golden question, to be honest. And I think particularly in the kind of if you think of it from the point of view of younger people working with adults, for example, in the care sector, the wages have always been an issue. I guess that's kind of nationally the wages are an issue. And I suppose from a children's services perspective as well, I know there's lots of work going on in Darlington and regionally to look at comparable wages across the region, and that's something that I think we're good at in Darlington, and that's improved massively over the last couple of years. I think one of the kind of key things that we're looking at in terms of recruitment is there's a concept about using our staff as recruiters. There's a lot of information and a lot of kind of presentations that I've been kind of attending recently, where the likes of Northeast Jobs and other job sites and other kind of job pushes and job fairs and things like that are great. They're fine and they serve a purpose in some ways, but actually in our kind of sectors, working with children, working with adults, it's our staff that become our recruiters. So we've got to talk to people. So we're going to be pushing again. I'm working with Karina in HR in the new year and now as well, actually, to be talking about how we use our staff as our recruiters so that they can talk to people that they know, not necessarily pinching from other organisations or other local authorities, but actually their colleagues and their friends and the people that they link with, that will hear all of these fantastic stories about what it's really like to work with children and young people. They're the ones that we need to be attracting, and they're the ones that we need to be training. And I think the key bit for me, progression is definitely a key bit, but destination is a real key bit for us, and the things that we've been talking about collectively with children's SLT, with adults SLT, around ensuring that when we get hold of someone, we can actually talk to them about a destination. So what we're aiming for you is to get you into the early help team in Darlington and develop from there. What we're aiming for you is to train you and develop you as a social worker. What we're aiming is to train you and develop you as an occupational therapist or a care worker, or to work in EE, to work in Cummins, wherever it may be. And that's the kind of key bit, the destination for the young person, and the destination for the adult that wants to change direction as well. So yeah, it's absolutely key. Progression and destinations is key for us.
Thank you. Can I just say one final thing? Martin, you are the person to be leading this. So thank you.
Thanks, Cindy.
Yeah, thanks, Cindy. Yeah, it's interesting, Martin. We may glean some good imports with our staff that's moving up from London. That's an area we might look at.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whilst we'd much rather have Darlington people in those jobs, I'm sure there's an opportunity to do some recruitment there.
Definitely.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else got any questions? If not, we'll move on to Joanne, who's going to talk about the Children's Centre Service Report.
Okay, how to follow Martin. No pressure. Okay, so I've been asked to come along this morning. Welcome all. For those that don't know me, I'm Jo Benson, and I'm Service Manager for Building Stronger Families, which is the former Early Help Team, and Young People's Engagement and Justice Service, which is the former Youth Offending Service. So we've had a bit of a rebrand with both the service areas. So I've been asked to come along to provide a bit of an update on the position offered up at McNay Street, the Building Stronger Families team, and there was information requested in regards to what we were doing post-COVID lockdown, and how we coped during those restrictions, and what we are doing now currently in terms of the current position. So for those of you that don't know, I mean, you've all had the opportunity to read the report, but just to say, we're based at McNay Street. Prior to the start of the COVID-19 pandemic and subsequent lockdowns in, I think, March 2020, we offered a high level of support by way of targeted delivery groups through the early help assessments, and universal groups also focusing on parental mental health, practical skills and children's development. Also, pre-COVID, we had a universal provision for teenage parents. We had parents-to-be, and new parents could attend a range of groups across the town, pre and post-birth groups for teenage parents. Midwives supported us through that, so very much a multi-agency approach with how we're working with our partners. And several groups aimed at babies up to 12 months and their parents, focusing on parents' well-being in particular. Health colleagues attended McNay Street and delivered the usual breastfeeding clinics, weigh-ins, and also we had young parents able to come along and ask any questions of their health visitors in a safe environment. There was a parental mental health group called Baby Steps, which was led by Talking Changes. That ran weekly from one of our outreach centres. So we have a bit of a hub and spoke. The hub is McNay, and then lots of spokes around the town to ensure that we're sort of encapsulating everybody's needs, really. And for those that aren't able to travel, that we're able to support them. And then there were also targeted programmes available for parents who are already open to services, so supporting children's social care, those within the care system. And we had a huge footfall of those young people come through our system, and we monitored that on a regular basis to ensure that we were targeting those that required that need. So post-lockdown, so obviously COVID came into fruition and we were asked to work from home. There was a home directive. We had to be quick to change the way we work to ensure that there was no impact on our families. One of the first things we did was open our Facebook page, hugely successful, and all credit to the team for the way that the diverse way that they worked with families. They did live sessions, which I think was very brave of them. So actually sitting there on the floor doing yoga with a little doll baby and whatever else it may be. But also it was the time to then reconsider what we were doing. Was it successful? Did we need to change anything? We needed to look at the impact of those families that we worked with. So we had a bit of a question and answers on that Facebook page as well. So confidential, families could type in, could you offer us this? Could you offer us that? It was very interactive, and it proved invaluable. Some days we were getting a hit of about 600 families or individuals on the Facebook page. It was huge. And for me, there's absolutely no way that obviously we'd be able to encapsulate that within a group work setting in a small building in McNay Street. So we were really assured that we were far reaching, and we were reaching those families that, for me, we should have been reaching anyway. It's those hidden ones that we don't hear from, the ones that we don't get referrals from. So we considered how we would maintain that. We did pre-record some sessions around child development, behaviour management, but a lot of it was about reaching out to the wider community. So we've actually kept that Facebook page going, and that's growing and growing as we speak. The Baby Steps, the mental health programme, which was originally face-to-face, we were actually getting such a reach for that group that we've maintained it virtually. After speaking to some of our families, they felt that it was much easier, safer to do it from their own environment, given the nature of the topic. So we've kept that actual virtual. We've listened to what people want. We've listened to our families, what they want from this, and that's what we've decided to do. It's their service. It's not ours. It's their service to provide to them. During lockdown, mental health, I'm sure it's no surprise to any of you around this table, as we say, virtual table. So what we also decided to, given that we had some time, we've trained all our practitioners to a level 2 in mental health awareness. And from that to in order to try and establish and maintain links with some of these really struggling families in our community, we developed a mindfulness group. So we have practitioners, and we've maintained this, practitioners that will take a group of children, mums, dads, grands, whoever it may need, and we walk them around. They do mindfulness sessions in the park, so it's safe distancing. They go on walks, they take their babies with them in the buggies, and we've had huge success around that, and the feedback has been fantastic. So again, we're keeping that. They do some mediation, they do yoga. If the weather's okay, they do the yoga. So really sort of diverse ways of working with our families that we haven't done previously. So over the summer of 21, we were guided by senior leaders that we could start to reopen some of our group work. It was identified that we were sort of getting to a position where we needed to start those groups up again, because the need and the necessity and the wish from families in the town was that they wanted to come back and have some face-to-face. So we started that in around July with a bulk reopening. I think it was in about September of this year. Initial observations, really interesting for me, and this is my terminology. I've called them COVID babies. What we are finding that some of these babies and their parents are lacking key development skills, and that relates to their age, their milestones. So, for example, I observed a group 2 or 3 weeks ago where we had some 2.5-year-olds that were showing no sign of interaction, very clingy with their parents, no single words, no interaction with other young people of a similar age. and no curiosity for anybody else around them, just really sort of intricate with their parents, and that has been it. So we are looking at this in great detail. So we're starting to deliver some more universal type intervention with our partners. And we've also developed a group around these targeted families that we've identified. And we've already seen some significant changes for the good in terms of how they're developing now as opposed to how they were. I am slightly concerned about how these COVID babies will transition from nursery to primary. So we've started some work around that. We did not a pilot with Firthmore, but they were the first to contact us, and they asked us to do some work with them around nursery to primary transition. So we've done that. We've had 6 young people or babies that we've worked with intensely in the nursery, and we're going to track them through to the primary setting just to see how they go. They start in January, so we're going to see how they go really. And we've developed a group around children to promote speech and language, specifically around what I've just talked about. And it's where the health visitors have identified a need. So they go within the homes and they've identified that there's a specific need, whether it's delayed development, whether it's concerns around speech and language and communication. So they're the things. For me, this is a live document because it's ever changing. I prepared this, 2 months ago, and things have changed again. As I'm speaking now, they are the things we are developing. Who knows where we'll be after Christmas? But I think what I would say is we're a small service. We've only got 19 practitioners and not all of them are full-time. We've got 15 full-time practitioners. Because we're small, we're able to adapt and change, and we're able to move with what we need to do. So we'll look at the performance data. What's the key themes that are coming out? What's the thematic concerns that are coming out from our community? And we adapt to that as best we can with what we've got and the resources we have. I'm very passionate about the work we're doing in early help. It's fairly new to me. I started working on this side in 2021. No, sorry. When did I start? In 2017, I started with the early help. Been in your years, so it was very different coming across to this early help work. I don't see it as any different. For me, early intervention is key wherever you are, and I think if you can intervene early, it's the best way that we're going to maintain that level of low-level support where it doesn't involve an impact on statutory services. Obviously, it saves money, but it's also about what's best for these families, keeping them out of that statutory social care system. So for me, we're working on adapting and changing to need and the impact of what our families are telling us in Darlington. We've got a vision longer term. We've just put in a bid, which Councillor Clark has been very supportive around a family transformation hub. So basically an end-to-end provision, which would have a hub and spoke model as well, and which would encompass everybody. It would be a holistic family approach, which is ultimately what we're driving for. So yeah, that's it really. Happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Joanne. I don't see any hands up. I think it sounds like COVID's had some positives in allowing you to look at some new ways of doing things, and it sounds as if you've picked up the ball and moving forward nicely. There you are, Mr. Snecker. How about a question from you?
Thank you very much. Well, it was more just to thank Joe for the presentation again, and having been having 3 kids myself, but also being a governor at a nursery school, and having run a play group for many years in the Arts Centre, and finally more recently in the Friends Meeting House. I understand the importance of that interaction, those non-formal gatherings for parents as well. You're talking about mental health. Many occasions, a mum clearly suffering, but the sort of the friendly network that they'd built up, stepping in and sort of offering advice and maybe signposting, via the person who runs the playgroup, signposting to services and care, and we've lost so much of that. And this idea of the COVID babies is something that I've been looking for information coming through to me as a counsellor, and so I'd be interested. These playgroups around the town. Do you have a connection with them at all, and are you able to offer them advice and sort of be there to help them help their kids and the parents and grandparents who use them? Because we've talked about being agile, and it's great to hear about, and we've talked about using our strengths and our resources, but there is that huge informal network out there, and we need to make sure those playgroups and drop-in centres get back up as soon as possible, and whether you and other officers can go out to them at all and engage. I was just interested whether that's on your radar at all, Jo.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. Yeah, it's part of our comms and media sort of, I would say, forward plan. So we link in very well with the nurseries and the schools across the town, and because we have that hub site but also the spoke site, and a lot of my staff were previously children's centre workers, so there's a lot of links there. There's a lot of people that know people across the town. But as part of the programme going forward, one of the first things we're going to do as we strengthen our offer and strengthen the way in which we work is going to be around the media profile. So actually we'll send out comms, we'll go and door knock. That's the intention. We're going to take it as far as we can, even if it's knocking on people's doors, going down to the nursery saying, we don't want to take your business. However, if you've got a particular need in a particular area, I've got staff trained that can support you in this, etc., etc. If they identify that they have a family or an individual that they're slightly concerned about, then obviously we can do that assessment alongside them. So it's not in isolation. The way we work is very much a multi-agency approach. We'll take those cases that we need to and work alongside or with, but obviously it is about very much around actually what have we got in the town, what do we need to do to support each other, and what do we need to do to reach out to those families that we don't know about. For me, that's the biggie. We see the ones that come in and they're the ones we work with, but it's the ones we don't see that do worry me, and that's where we want to take it further.
Cheers, Jo.
Yeah, thank you, Joanna. Don't see any more hands, so I think we just need to say thank you. Oh, whoops. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks very much. Yeah, in relation to that last comment, Jo, I mean, I think that what's been set up is absolutely amazing, but it's those families that don't connect that are my worry. And I also wonder how much discretion you have and your team have to actually put in place simple things. Because when I read some of the tragic news over the past few weeks and the fact that families have actually cried out for help, it could be something as simple as, having somebody look after the children for a while, to, what I mean? To be able to say, I just can't cope anymore. Maybe not to go into care, but to have some immediate support to take some of the burden off. And I'm wondering, when you spot those things, whether you have the discretion and also the money to do that. That's my first question. And really, my big question is, you're doing all this, who's looking after youth offending? That problem hasn't gone away either. But anyway, I'll let you answer that. And that might have to be over a coffee sometime.
Yes, definitely. Don't worry about youth offending. It's in very good hands. And I've got my two hats, so I still that's doing fine. In terms of your question, Cindy, absolutely. My staff will do absolutely anything that is required to support a family, whether it's going in. We have looked after children while mum's got. One example, we had a mum who had a terribly sick baby in James Cook, but had 3 other children. Father disappeared, and mum was in hospital with this really poorly sick baby. We had staff in all weekend, just looking after the baby, doing whatever, taking to nursery, and that was everybody. We all stepped in, from myself down to the workers across the management team. Everybody stepped in. We'll do anything, clean houses, whatever it takes. That we don't need money to do that. We don't need money to do that. We just need people and staff that are willing to do that, and they're brilliant. Yeah, can't fault them.
Thank you for that reassurance.
Okay.
Thanks.
Joanne, there was an issue that was run by Cardiff University or something. This What Matters was it called, which gave social workers hands-on money to do small things that just change. Do you have funds like that available to you still?
Funds for early help are starting to come through, but they're all bidding processes, aren't they? And this one I talked about before, it's called a Family Transformation Hub grant, and it's transforming your sort of small children's centre into a family hub. Now, we've put in for it, and we're only a small council, so we don't have anybody that writes our bids. We have to do them ourselves, and we don't normally receive them till lastminute.com. So we've worked really hard to do this, but only 11 local authorities across the country are going to receive this money. So it's one of those things where we need money to maintain what we're doing, but also for me, it is really about how we do it without the money. How can we change things without the money? We used to not having a great deal amount of money in Darlington, really, if I'm honest. So it's actually about how we change and how we adapt our provision to meet the needs. There are monies becoming more and more available. I have looked at the COVID Recovery Fund monies through the council, and we've put some applications in for that as well. So it's just where we can, really.
Yeah, it was just that it was almost the availability of petty cash to do simple things like, giving someone a new broom because they haven't got one, or a hairdressing appointment or something like that. And that thing through Cardiff seemed to provide very small amounts of money that can make huge differences if they're spent at the right time. I see Chris has got his hand up. Have you got something to say on that, Chris?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. It was really just to make that point. So that was the devolved budget scheme that we were part of, which was a kind of pilot scheme that Cardiff University and the What Works Centre did. I think one of the challenges probably for Jo and her service area is it's the lack of statutory kind of powers and duties under that early help provision. So generally that devolved budget work was when children were kind of defined under the Children Act as children in need, and we're really keen to support families at an earlier stage before they're getting to that point. So as you'll be aware, we had the members of the independent review of social care that Josh McAllister's leading on currently, that came and visited as one of the strong representations that are made to them, and was echoed by other managers in the services, that real drive that there needs to be a further consideration about making an early help offer a statutory duty for the local authority, because I think for as long as it's essentially just a power and something that we can do rather than we're compelled to do, there's always going to be that challenge that families are almost better off once they hit a certain level of need, and actually exactly the sort of things that yourselves and other councillors have been challenging us on, which is if we really want to see our early help services be in whatever the children and families of Darlington needs it to be, then that's what we'll strive to do. But there's definitely a challenge at a national level around, should we as a council be compelled to have a certain sized offer for early help in the same way that we're challenged to have those statutory services. So it was just an observation, really.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else got any questions? Right, thank you, John. Very nice presentation, that, and I'm very pleased to see that your team are doing as well as they always do. If we can move on, I think, then to our work programme. There's a couple of things I'd like to say on the work programme. We've got some items that I've been chasing up with Alison, and she's managed to get an offer from the young people of the town to come and give us have a Teams meeting with them, including the junior youth MP and the youth MP. We've got a couple of dates for that, which we'll pencil in. we thought originally of bringing them along to a scrutiny committee, but we thought in the first instance we'd set up a specific Teams meeting that all the scrutiny members will be invited to, that we can just talk to the young people and see how we can get a better connection with them. Because I know that you know, Jonathan I'd also like Mr. Clark. I'd also like to have a better connection with our young people, and that might set up a situation that we can have a regular engagement with them. And then we've got, from the point of view of education and skills, we've got a lady from TVCA who's going to give us a presentation on education and skills and what they provide, and that'll be a joint presentation. Shona Duncan, she's called, she's the lead officer for education and skills on Tees Valley, and I've seen a presentation from her in the past, and it just shows us how Tees Valley is supporting Darlington. It tends to be the older people, the older children and care leavers, and up into adults. So it'll be a joint presentation for resources, adults and children. So we've got a couple of dates offered for that. I'll firm them up and we'll put them on the work programme. We're still struggling a little bit with a breakdown on youth and employment. We've got some numbers that look to be outliers in the northeast, and I know that we're trying to get some better contacts with the DWP to try and get a better understanding of what those people are. And we do have a DWP staff member in the hub in Darlington now, so that may help. But that outlying percentage of out of work children is something we're still struggling with, coming to find a way of understanding better what it is. So other than that, has anyone else anything to say on the work programme? Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. I have one issue that I'd like to propose a task and finish on, and that relates to children and young people who are not in school. I know of one particular case that I've been discussing repeatedly at my shadow cabinet meeting with the director, and I'm very concerned that this case still hasn't been solved, and that this particular young person has been out of school from last summer. And I'm really wondering if there are other children in the same position. And my understanding is that our local authority has a statutory obligation to have a place for every child in a school. So I would like to propose to work with other members who may be interested in the same topic to maybe have a meeting, if Tony could maybe help facilitate that, with some of the school colleagues who sit on that board. I know it's a multi-agency group as well, but to talk about how that's going, because from where I'm sitting, it's not really working, and the local authority has influence. Clearly, you know, it's difficult for us to make a directive to get somebody back into school, but I think that I'd like to learn more about that, because it's really not good for this young person nor her family.
Yeah, I think if Tony's prepared to pick that up and have a look at it, it sounds as if it's a particular instance, Councillor Hughes, but maybe there are other children that fall into this. I sometimes wonder if this outlying number that we've got of children out of work might tie into things like that. So it's an area worth looking at. And will you work up a task and finish, and let's put that on for the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tony?
Thank you, Chair. No, more than happy to provide any assistance in terms of data and facilitation around that. And interestingly, the Secretary of State recently wrote to all local authority chief executive officers around the issue of school attendance nationally. So some of the points that the Secretary of State made may well be useful as well in that regard as well, Chair.
Thank you. Chris, have you got something to add?
Yes, please, Chair. I was just really reflecting on Councillor Hughes' queries earlier in terms of missing, and I'm mindful in terms of some increase in numbers, but actually operationally we've changed our processes quite significantly, and just really wanted to float whether it would be helpful for members to have that brought to a future meeting, really just a paper outlining our our changes, our current response to missing. There's a number of links into risks around exploitation and how we work with our exploited group and missing group, and it just might be helpful to bring a short paper in if that would be helpful.
Yeah, I think that would be great, Chris. Yes, thank you.
That's fine.
Councillor Snecker.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. There were a couple of things that the Scrutiny Committee of members have sort of questioned recently, and I just want to make sure they don't fall off the radar and we continue to follow these up. One was quite recently about the funding structure for learning and skills, where it seemed to be that they were caught in a sort of like damned if you do, damned if you don't. The way the funding was calculated for them meant that COVID sort of kiboshed them. I just want to make sure that the scrutiny, and we heard quite a worrying story about schools failing to respond within a statutory time. We heard of exclusions of children in care seemingly being certainly the impression I got was that they seemed to be running at a higher rate than we would expected. And one of the things that members felt would possibly help was almost like a charter for the schools in Darlington to agree to follow the way children in care are treated and the kind of the service and access to learning. Obviously, there's a statutory requirement, but we thought maybe that going above and beyond, because we know the importance for children in care to be in learning and to be in a place that's suitable for them. And again, where is that going? I don't want that idea to disappear. So those are two, Chair, that I think that I'd like us to keep on the radar. I don't know whether they need to go on the work programme or whether we just need to ask officers to come back with ideas and update us as progress. Thank you.
Yeah, I think one of the education and skills one, we'll see some of that when we get this presentation from Tees Valley, because I think most of the money for our skills and education people come from there. Maybe we should have something from the virtual head on the children in care school situation. It's a concern, Matthew, but I don't know what volume it is. So perhaps we'll get Calvin to come and give us a bit of a feedback on that. That would be good. I think we had Councillor Renton was next, and then Councillor Clark.
Could I just come in to answer Matthew's query on learning and skills? Yes. I'm presuming you were on about the clawback possibility from Tees Valley with funding. That's not happened. They've managed to hit the percentage required, so the funding going forward is okay with learning and skills. And there's other work going on with myself and them at the moment to make them a bit more streamlined, to put it that way, and effective.
Brilliant. Thanks, John.
That. Okay.
Thanks, John.
Councillor Renton.
Thank you, Chair. It was, I don't know if it's work we need to do, but I don't know how much oversight we have on school meals for children, particularly in primary school. And the reason I bring this up, I think I mentioned this to you before, is that my son every day, when I ask him when he comes home from school what he had for lunch, he'll tell me, oh, he had pizza, he had this, that and the other. I say, well, did you not have any veg? He said, yeah, I was offered veg, but I said no. I was like, well, really, that shouldn't be an option. So they're meant to be healthy meals, aren't they? So what oversight do we have on that kind of thing if we're trying to make sure that kids are eating healthily? And is there something we need to look into?
Tony, have you anything to say on that? I'm not, I don't know where to go on that one.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Renton. There are certainly national standards, given the wide variety of trusts and single academy trusts in Darlington. There's probably would need to be some work done in terms of in terms of surveying individual schools and individual trusts approach, because we don't, as a local authority, have an overarching role in terms of the provision of school meals, and the vast majority of schools in Darlington will have their own arrangements with individual caterers. But that's not to say that work can't be done to understand the approach across the piece. But there isn't that work would need to be done to establish that. There isn't a data set that I'm currently aware of which is easily obtainable to present to committee.
You're on mute, Chair.
Thanks, Tony. We'll have a bit of a thought about that one, see how we maybe can get some information on that. Martin?
Did Martin want to come in on that?
Yeah, Martin?
Oh. Yeah, it was just a really quick one, to be honest. It's in terms of public health colleagues that are doing some really fantastic work with the schools around the Darlington Schools Healthy Food Awards that they've created. And there's some really brilliant stuff going on. I know it's lots of different pilots are happening at the moment, but it's essentially around training school food staff around health and healthy eating. Lots of different ways to kind of engage in that side. And probably it would be Ken Ross that would be able to feedback more on that one. But I know there's some great work going on. I've been doing some shooting of videos and vodcasts and things, and the training programs where it's all available online for the staff in the schools as well.
Okay, thank you, Martin. That sounds interesting. We'll maybe get Ken Ross to talk to us about that in the future sometime.
Can I just say quickly, it's not that the healthy food isn't being served, it's more that the kids are getting the option of the vegetable, and a 4-year-old child is not going to say yes to broccoli when he's got a piece of pizza on his plate, is he? So it's just how that works. I was interested in, but yeah, thank you.
Yeah, bit of parental training required here, Mike.
Oh, well, he's forced at home, so he should be forced at school. He'll always say no.
Okay, thanks for that. Alison, did you manage to capture those items that we've just talked about? And I'll talk to you offline and try to fit them in the best we can in the future going forward.
Yes, absolutely. I'm just going to confirm I've made notes of all of those, and we can contact the officers that I think various officers there mentioned some other officers to contact, but I've collected all that together, Chair, yet.
Thank you very much. Any supplementary items? Anybody got anything else to raise that is important enough to extend this meeting? No. Well, thank you all for attending, and we'll see you next time. And happy Christmas to everybody. I'm sure we'll all make the best.